So you were
I don't even make one of our production facilities is so different. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be starting in about 10 minutes, sort of. So just let me know.
Oh, we like temperature.
And this is Nathan.
Hi, how are you? That's not Nathan. I do that. You sure that's not Nathan?
And this is Nathan's wife, Jennifer. Sherman. Sherman has the daughter Sherman.
I don't think so, but you know, she and Maria.
What she works in.
Yeah. Maria, she was doing her work.
I love this.
I've seen her 2 or 3 times. Yeah, I've seen her 2 or 3 times, and then, but you were always like, so she's the only one I know can run fast. According to her times. According to her times. 11 minutes left. Yeah, I would run it 11 minutes. I didn't understand back in those days. I would go to the racetrack.
Okay, everyone, it's right at 1 o'clock or a little bit after. If you might just do me a big old favor, it's find a seat. I really appreciate the turnout today. This is great. Thank you so much. All right, what I'd like to do first if you knew my father or a patient of my father, please stand. Just about everybody. Just about. Okay. At this time, I would ask Danny, can you come on up? Let's do a quick prayer.
Here to celebrate his life. And I pray comfort and blessings on his family. And again, we thank you for sharing him with us as we go through our lives. May we remember him fondly and remember the jokes that he told and the good times that we had with him. Father, we just pray that you bless this entire group, friends, family alike. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, Danny. Yeah, please be seated. So So I'd like to wish a good afternoon to our family and friends, members of the community, patients. Thank you for taking the time today. And time is a precious commodity, as we all know, to remember and celebrate the life of my father, David Vernon Honeycutt. Thank you so much for that. My father had many names. Besides David, throughout the sojourn of his life. Vernon, that was his middle name, but Vernon is who he was. That was required in Oregon County and many parts of northern Arkansas. That's what his mother called him always. In fact, there are many people in that area that did not know that David was my father's given first name. And that is the truth. He was Dave among his peers. Dentists throughout the country, dental school buddies, he was Dave. Pop among his kids, especially me. I have no reason why that came about. Dad, that was his favorite. Dr. Honeycutt, always in the office, which very impressed me greatly. Doc, many of his friends, especially here in Monet, I think a lot of you just know him as Doc. Uncle Doc. Uncle David, Scott, you always called him Uncle David. And then my personal favorite, Grandpa Doc. So Dad had specific wishes for the celebration. We talked about this a few times. We did talk on this occasion. And what he simply wants for today is an opportunity to get together and reminisce about good times. My father loved to both make and share memories. He really loved to share memories. I have boxes and boxes of pictures that I have gone through, boxes of pictures, and I know that's what we want to do today. My father led an amazing life full of adventures, successes, some setbacks, and lessons learned. Common themes for influence in his life included his zest for life, his zeal for learning, always, and most importantly, the providence of his God, whom he loved dearly. His life was impacted by many people from all over the world, many of whom are here today. And we are going to delve into many highlights of his life and hopefully gain some insight from all of you here. This is our participation sport. This is what this is. As we delve into my father's life, I believe you will see the story of the American dream. That's what it really is. So David Vernon Honeycutt was born June 28, 1938 in Sharp County, Arkansas. I didn't say a city, right? Sharp County, Arkansas. He was born in a humble house in the country to Nathaniel and Opal Honeycutt. He was the oldest of 13 children, who are sometimes referred to as the baker's dozen. 10 of those siblings are here. Yeah. From California to Florida. In doing some research for today, I was surprised at the number of times that my father's family moved in those early years. From southern Missouri and northern Arkansas, which you would expect, to Tennessee, and as far away as Fort Wayne, Indiana. That was a surprise to me. They always returned to northern Arkansas and south central Missouri. My grandfather, Nathan, held a wide variety of positions during his life, ranging from a school teacher to a forestry agent, dairy farmer, railroad worker. I think he actually worked on the Frisco Railroad, I believe, which is kind of a tradition in my family. Appliance store proprietor, and most notably a minister for the Church of Christ in multiple locations. These varied experiences helped shape my father in many ways. My grandfather instilled in my father a love of the outdoors, hunting and fishing at a very early age. I don't think that's a surprise to any of you. He would wander the hills and the hollers and the creeks of the Ozarks with friends and family, getting into all sorts of adventures. So now we're going to tell the first story. So this is a story my dad liked to tell. I am I'm absolutely sure it is true. So he had a bunch of friends, and they fished a lot. They fished in streams, and I guess there was this school of suckers, right? You know, everybody knows what a sucker is. Fish. If you don't, just ask. Somebody here can tell you. There was a school of suckers, and they were under a stump, and nobody could get to the school. They tried everything, and finally, you know, they got together, and in the true spirit of ingenuity, some of his friends, one of his friends said, "Well, my dad's got some dynamite." And the other friend said, well, my dad's got some plastic caps. Evidently, you need both. I don't know why. And so they split, right? You know, just like in the old cartoon, split, come right back. And evidently, they used both of those together in conjunction and put together an entire string, probably going across this entire thing full of suckers. So that's kind of, you know, that was some of the adventures that my father liked to have early on. You know, there's going to be a lot more stories like that, I'm sure, today. My father held many responsibilities growing up. Being the oldest in a rapidly growing family will do that to you. He had responsibilities in the home and on the dairy farm. He did his best to balance that with his schooling in Pocahontas, Arkansas, Maynard, Arkansas, and everywhere else. He did his best to balance that. And he loved where he grew up. He really did. But he always looked outside for opportunities to grow. He had that adventuresome spirit. His uncle and aunt, Charles and Ava White, they lived in St. Louis, which that's the big city, right? And they graciously allowed my father to stay with them there, providing an opportunity for a young man to spread his wings. And there he found varied opportunities in the city to work. He worked at McDonnell Douglas as a line worker. He worked as an inspector at a local electrical motor company. He worked on the loading docks at Kroger Grocery. That was an educational experience for a lot of reasons. I think that was his first experience with the mob. When Charles and Ava moved to Henderson, Tennessee for Charles to attend Freed-Hardeman College, my father followed them and attended there as well. He spent a few years at Freed-Hardeman. In college, he learned a great deal, but he still didn't really know what he wanted to do with his life. Ideas of professions such as dentistry appealed to him. He didn't really see a way at the time to make those dreams happen. The dreams were out of reach. He didn't even want to think about it. It was just too much. He followed Charles and Ava back to St. Louis, went back to work. That's what he did. And then by the providence of God, two life events happened. Event number one, while attending church, he met a young student from Barnes School of Nursing. Well, in Keckney, my mother had just come to nursing school from Southern Illinois and was on track to her career as a registered nurse at Barnes. Think about that. That's impressive. They didn't start dating immediately. They were just friends. Eventually, they did have a date. And by all accounts, where's Mom at? It was a very good date. Very good date. Yes, Mom says it was a good date. Almost immediately after that first date, event number two happened. My father was drafted. He was drafted into the United States Army. This was a transformative event in my father's life. It really was. He learned a great deal about perseverance and gained critical coping skills and learned a great deal about the world, both good and bad. We made friendships from that time that endured for the rest of his life. After completing basic training at Fort Chaffee, my father was assigned to the infantry at Fort Dix, where he was a combat medic. And many adventures ensued there, and I'm probably not going to get into some of those here. He never saw combat, but his unit was put on alert during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that was a critical time. If his unit had made it to the beach, they had told his unit that the average life expectancy of his unit once they hit the beaches was going to be 6 seconds. He always told me that they should have gone in. I'm pretty glad they didn't. Providence of God there, working its wonderful ways. While at Fort Dix, my father was given the opportunity to work with the dentist on the base as a dental assistant. Critical time. This opened up a whole new world for him. He made the most of it, learning everything that he could. He saw a future for himself, and the dentist on the base did as well, giving him valuable letters of recommendation that he would find useful in the future. When his 2 years were up, he was given the option to go to officers candidate school, but he now knew that the Army was not his path. Though he was grateful for everything that the Army had given to him. He wanted to be a dentist. He wanted to do general practice. And as for my mother, that must have been a great first date. Because they continued to date the entire time he was in the service. We have boxes and boxes of letters to prove that. My mother and father were married on June 19, 1965, and this past Saturday was the 56th anniversary of that union. My father finished undergraduate work at Southwest Missouri State University in Springfield on the GI Bill, while my mother worked as a pediatric nurse in area hospitals. He was very concerned about getting into dental school, and he's very transparent about this with me. He hadn't been the greatest student growing up. That whole thing about balancing everything, that was a real challenge for him. He had applied to Washington University in St. Louis with no success, but he did secure a panel interview at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And he met with the admissions board, and they really put him through the ringer. I mean, they had him in there for an hour, just really pushing him. They really gave it to him. He always talked about this. And then at the end of the session, the head of the board with a big smile on his face said, let him know that he had been in direct contact with those same Fort Dix Army dental staff from years before, and they had already decided he was going to be attending a freshman class. So he always got a kick out of that. My father made his way through dental school with mom by his side. He worked very hard using that same GI Bill, and also ran with a bunch of other dental students, a air conditioner installation firm named Dentco. Dentco, that was the name of the firm. And that helped pay for school. And along the way, I was born. And my sister was born a few years later. Dad graduated dental school in 1971. And the focus would turn to the next phase of his life as a father, dentist, and member of the Monette community. So that's Dad's life in a nutshell. Birth to dental school and getting ready to join the Monette community. Before we delve into that time with Monette, I'm going to ask everybody here, indulge the family for a few minutes. We've got, this is an opportunity, really, I'm going to call it a family right now, to share some stories. We've got some that have prepared some remarks, and then we're going to pass the mic around, which is really where the fun stories come from, right? And the memories. So at this time, Sheree. Some of you may recognize Sheree. Sheree is a reporter for Fox 4, Kansas City.
Thank you so much. Okay, so can you hear me? Yeah. I'm going to read a letter from my Aunt Loretta first, and then I'm going to read mine because I'll probably get emotional if I read mine first. So this is from my Aunt Loretta, and she says, I'm Loretta Honeycutt Mills, one of David Vernon Honeycutt's 5 younger sisters. To the family, David Vernon was always Vernon. Either while David was in service or college, his name was changed to David. David liked DV, so when we received a call from David, he would say, this is DV, or David Vernon Honeycutt. I, as well as the family, would like to thank each of you for coming. David would be very pleased. I'm sure all of you have touched David's life in some way, whether church, dental school, or dental school board, or one of the many organizations he was a part of. David and I were very close. We were the 2 older ones of the children. David would call me on my birthday and sing happy birthday to me. It made it easy for me to wish David a happy birthday, as my birthday is the day before his. I will be 81 on June 27th, and David's is on the 28th. So, okay, so Brad and Rustin, it is now your job to call and sing Amaretta happy birthday every year for Uncle
Yeah.
It's tomorrow.
Yeah, and there you go. It'll be easy. David and I were very close. We double dated, we went on car rides, and at times we just talked. David even made me a bridge from 40 years ago, and it's still working great. It's out at the campground where her trailer is. Now, David was very important in my life. I lost my husband on May 29th, 2 years ago, to dementia. David came to me, he was leaving on a trip and knew Leroy was going down fast. He told me that regardless of whether he passes while I'm gone or otherwise, I want to do Leroy's celebration of life. It was Leroy's choice that he was cremated. David did a wonderful job. He used Andy Williams' song, Born Free. It was so fitting for Leroy, as well as David, as they went on several trips hunting and fishing. Colorado, Canada, Louisiana. They wanted to go to Alaska, but due to Leroy's health, they didn't get to go. David and Leroy were brother-in-laws, but in life, they were brothers. David, Llewellyn, Leroy, and I spent as much time as we could together. When they came to Thayer, they almost always stayed at our home. I do not remember David and I ever having a harsh word. Thank you again for coming. David Vernon, I miss you so much. God bless each of you for coming. You have truly helped the family by doing so. Loretta.
Thank you, Sherette.
As for me, sugar, I should know better. Okay, so I wrote it out, but then I just said, I'm just gonna do bullet points because it's easier. I don't want to sit here and read. So I never got to know either one of my grandfathers. A lot of us didn't get to know our grandfather on our Honeycutt side. And Uncle David was the oldest. So for me, he was always my grandfather in a way. When he passed away, people would, ask me where I'm going, what I'm doing this weekend. And I would say, oh, I'm going to my grandfather's funeral. And I stop myself. Say, no, I'm going to my Uncle Doc's funeral. Because he had such an important part in my life. When I was about, 9 years old, my dad got a new job. Sorry. My dad got a new job, very busy. We lived in California. And being like a 9-year-old girl during the summer, it's like, what are you going to do with a 9-year-old girl? I'm not just going to sit at home all day. And so I would come to Missouri and visit pretty much every year. And so my dad would ship me out early to come stay with my Uncle Doc because it gave me something to do and it kept me in line. But really, they were some of the best days of my life. I would get on a plane and most of the time I would make it on time, except that one time I got stuck in Denver and I had to talk to Rustin on the phone for like an hour. But my Uncle Doc and my Aunt Llewellyn would always be waiting for me there in Springfield, and they would drive me back out to their property. And their property is a place unlike anything that I had the opportunity to see in California. If you've never been to their house, it's this beautiful farmhouse, big wide open spaces, grasses, flowers, a garden, blackberries, all kinds of stuff. And I got to just kind of run around like I lived in the country or something, even though I lived in like suburban California. And I got to see stars like I never saw them before. I got to pick blackberries with Uncle David. And we spent a lot of like special time together, because Aunt Llewellyn would take care of me. It was a very special time in my life. And sometimes Aunt Llewellyn would be busy and Uncle Doc would take care of me, and we would do things like go get ice cream or go get dinner, or he would even sometimes let me go get a movie, and then he would actually watch the movie that I picked as a 12-year-old girl with me, which I appreciated. And they were just really special times, and we would travel. So unlike a lot of my family members, my Uncle David and Aunt Llewellyn would take me places. You know, they would have 2 weeks with this 12-year-old girl. What are we gonna do with her? I don't know. Let's put her in the back of the van and drive her around the state. And, you know, I would listen to Rustin's CDs that I would steal out of the basement and play them in my disc van as we traveled. So I got to listen to all different kinds of CDs, and it was so cool. I thought it was so cool. They had this like old little TV that would sit in the van, if you remember the burgundy van. And I was like, well, this van has a TV in it. Unlike anything I have known. And so that was always really special. But I think the most special trip that Uncle David took me on was when he took me to the Space Needle. He took me all the way to Seattle. I went from California to Missouri, and then we went all the way to Washington. And I got to see this. I'd never been there. I'm from California, from the Bay Area, and he took me there. And that was just a really special time. I remember Brad was there.
Yep.
Brad was there. We got to hang out, and that was just really, really special. And so for me, life wasn't always easy. It took me a long time to figure my life out. And about 10 years ago, at Rustin's wedding, I was with Uncle David in the elevator, and I was figuring out school and what I wanted to do with my life, and the recession had just happened, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? I don't know. And Uncle David looked at me and he said, when are you ever going to graduate college? And at the time, it hurt my feelings. Like, I was just like staring at him, like, how could he say that to me? That's so insulting. You know, like, whenever I feel like it, I guess. And so I really took that hard for quite a while. And I did eventually graduate college. I did it. And it was really, you know, special to me that he got to see me grow. You know, we had that special bond where he saw me as a child, he saw me go through these really difficult things. And he only said that to me because he knew I could do it. Because he knew that he did it, he figured it out, he went through the war, you know, he went through hard things, and he got everything together and he figured his life out. Why couldn't I do it, you know? And it just really, it was very special when we gathered. You know, Loretta was talking about the celebration of life for Uncle Leroy, and I got to come, and Uncle David was there, and he was so proud of me. You know, he told everybody about me. He said, this is Sheree, she's done so much, and it meant so much to me that he got to see me succeed. And he was always there for me. From the time I was really little to, you know, the day he died. And so I don't mean to stand up here and cry, but I just want you to understand how important this man was to me. My Uncle Doc was really and is the best man ever. Thank you so much.
Let's do this for a minute. Okay. Jamie, right?
After that.
Wow.
I can talk.
Yes, yes, you can talk.
Okay.
So most of you know me. Can you hear me? I'm Jen. I'm Brad's wife. I'm the first daughter-in-law. Doc and I had an interesting relationship. The first time I ever came to Monette, Brad and I were just friends. I was 18, Brad was 19. He's like, hey, I'm going home. You want to just come hang in Monette with me? And I'm like, okay. He didn't know he was going to marry me someday, but I did. So I came to Monette, had dinner. Llewellyn had gotten me set up in the blue bedroom. That's where I was gonna stay for the weekend. We did the whole cruise around, you know, town and stuff. Sounded good. And but so we're sitting at dinner, and it was my first time meeting Diane and Rustin, and we're all sitting there, and somehow Brad and I have this relationship where we can like tease each other and I can tell him when he's wrong. And it started happening at dinner. So David looks at me and he goes, you kind of remind me of that dog with the tail that sits up in the air, that little Pekingese or Yorkie or something that kind of takes over the room. And I'm like, yep, that's me. And so I didn't take it to heart because I knew who I was. I knew they were gonna get me eventually as a family member. So that kind of, I felt that if he was able and comfortable to talk to me that way, then I was in. I just had to convince everybody else, especially the son. So, David and I had different views on a lot of things. Political views, everything from, everything. And he was one person who I could spar back and forth with and knew he wouldn't get mad at me and I wouldn't, even though I'd be upset with him at the time, I still loved him, but I could give it back. And I think he appreciated that side of me too, even if he, which that grunt has now transferred to my life. So when Brad gets worked up, he's. But David was always very supportive of me too. He always loved me. When I came into the family, I already had Dakota. Dakota was 3 years old. He never, ever made us feel like Dakota wasn't his or his grandson. And that was very important. And so he figured though he was going to change me from a city girl to a country girl. And he took me out back, taught me how to shoot. Never touched a gun in my life before. And he had me shooting targets out in the back 40. And from that point on, my name was Annie Oakley. So I'm not quite sure if that was because of my attitude or my gun skills, but so he was my second dad. My dad passed away 10 years ago, and when I had health issues and went through some surgeries and stuff, he was always, when he would come in, he'd always be like, "Hey, lady," and he'd give me hugs and he'd tell me how proud he was of me and how happy he was that I was healthy and I was going to be around for my family and his son. And so David was very, very special, and I miss him. I miss talking to him up on the hill. But I will never forget that when my dad passed away, him and Llewellyn came in and he held my hand. And he was there for me since my dad couldn't be. But with that, we then had Paige. When Paige was born, everybody was all excited because finally one that looked like a Honeycutt. Dimples, everything, the chin. And so, he was like, yeah, she's like, we got one that looks like one of us. And Althea was like, yes. But with that, I just wanted to say, I was never, ever, ever made to feel not worthy of joining this family. It's a crazy group of people. I love all of you. So with that, I just want to say, I love you, Doc. We miss you. Your boat will be in good hands up in Wisconsin. We are checking the tires beforehand, so it comes, so we don't have any flats like we've had to listen to as he would drive it up there. But I have a few messages from Diane, Trey, and Jensen. Now, if I can get through these, I did not read them last night because I was afraid to. I didn't want to be emotional to start, so I'm going to start with Diane. When I think of Dad, I think of the encouragement he gave me all my life. Whether he was attending a sporting event or a choir concert of mine, during school, he always encouraged me to do my best and would offer praise afterward. The same can be said for my children, Trey and Jensen. He attended many grandparents' days celebrations with them. He was also always so proud of them. And Trey and Jensen, in turn, were super proud of their grandpa Doc. I know they would agree with me that we were blessed to have him in our lives. I remember all the support over the years. In October of 2008, I did have a cancer scare and Dad was right there, front and center, doing everything he could to keep me positive. He simply said, "Sissy, you're gonna be just fine. You and your mom will head to St. Louis. Get that yucky thing out of your back and everything will be okay." He followed up with one of his huge hugs, and down the road, Mom and I went. I was scared to pieces, but in the end, he was right. A friend of mine, Connie Mead, shared this story with me after Dad's passing. "Diane, your daddy was always such a caring man. I remember when my cancer was really bad and I had to have a tooth fixed. Money just wasn't available with my $1,100 weekly in medicine costs. I just couldn't come up with enough to fix it, so I told him we just had to pull it. I can't pay that much." He left the room and I thought he was upset with me because he wanted me to fix it, but I just couldn't pay it. He came back in after the numbness was set and he worked on it. I had my eyes closed and just letting him work because I was trying not to cry, because I felt I should be trying to fix it. About 20 minutes later, he said, "All done." I asked, "Where's my tooth?" He said, "In your mouth." "And it's fixed. Now go home and get well." I went to pay the bill and she said, "He isn't charging you anything." It was a blessing I had never forgotten. I tried to pay him a couple of times later and he just always said, "Just use that to take care of someone else." I never knew this story, but honestly, I'm not surprised. This is the way Dad was. He loved helping people who needed it. Dad truly was a blessing to all of us. Today, we celebrate you, Dad, your life, your love for your family, and your community. Yeah, Doc did a lot in the community with his dental practice, helping out people. So Trey, I was very lucky to get to spend a lot of one-on-one time with Grandpa Doc my entire life. Whether we were fishing, golfing, working in the shop or the field, I was always with my best friend. He was always there to help me in anything I needed. I was able to go on many fishing trips with Grandpa and his buddies. We always had a great time. I am very thankful for all the memories I made with him over the years. Trey. Then Jensen. Growing up, Grandma and Grandpa would take us to the lake to fish and swim. We always had a good time, especially when my cousin Paige was here during the summer. We got to go to Branson quite a bit too. The Dixie Stampede was one of our favorites. As most of you know, Grandpa loved ice cream. So when the family was together, his favorite thing was to make homemade ice cream for everyone. I miss you, Grandpa, but I will always have great memories in my life with you. So yeah, so the Wisconsin Honeycutts, we just are so appreciative of everything that Doc has ever done for us. He was always there for every graduation, he was able to make it for Dakota and Carly's wedding last September, which was very important. So we love you, Doc. We miss you. And we will see you soon.
You're still on? Great. Okay, I'm gonna open it up. Is there anybody else from the family? Any siblings? Any techniques? All right, Jerry.
I'm number 5 in the group. I'll try to have it. You don't want me close. That's true. I'm number 5, as I said. I'm not going to go down a bunch of stuff. I think I'll list a couple of things though. I've done mine quickly. About 40 years ago, David and I and Glenn and Leroy decided to make a fishing trip down the Black River. And it was getting late in the day. And Glenn and Leroy were in another boat and they took off ahead of us. David and I were in the back boat and we were coming up behind as fast as that little boat could go. And the motor hit a stump. And that motor shot up in the air about 5 feet or so, at least. It looked like it went 10 feet, but I'm sure it's about 5 down in the water. And so we're miles away from getting out, so we're paddling down the Black River and it's getting dark. Glenn and Leroy are freaking out. And we might finally made it. Another story that comes to mind is he tried to shoot me. I was a little twerp and living in Warm Springs, Arkansas. David was living up in St. Louis, working up there in Avon. He come home with one of his friends. I don't know if he got the friend there or somewhere else. And I'm out in the field and I see them coming over that way and I know they're shooting their guns. And I got back up in a little grove of trees and rocks and hid because I didn't want them to see that I was there. So as they come down the middle of the field, they're using this rock that I'm hiding behind as target practice. I never did tell him I was behind that rock. Couple of good things that he really did for us. I got married about 53 years ago. He was in dental school. Made a special trip.
Mhm. You did?
He made a special trip out to New Mexico for our wedding. He ended up. And a few years later, he brought Mom out to New Mexico. And they really, especially that first trip, she couldn't afford it. I knew that. They did. And they made that sacrifice. And I'm okay with it.
Anybody else from the family? No? Kathleen?
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for indulging us. Here you enjoy.
I enjoy your next thing. I'm Joy. I'm married to Rustin, and our children are Kara and Lauren, David Thomas. He's named after his two grandpas. I joined the family officially 11 years ago today. I'll never forget our first trip up here to meet the fam. It was quite an experience from going out on the tractor to see the land, picking up turnips in the field, going out with Brad and Jen that night, and going to a familiar Church of Christ, to eating pheasant, wrapped in bacon, and pickles. We went out on the tractor and saw the land and a beautiful house. And it was the stories they would tell, all the experiences of the family. We're hearing more and more about this beautiful family. of his growing up and how he raised his boys to be hardworking. And from planting a Christmas tree farm, planting the trees behind the driveway, making up machines to do the job with large engines on things that didn't need large engines. Saw blades that went on mowing the lawnmowers. And a pedal car that had a too big of an engine on, a huge saw blade to cut the brush, and all the stories of the large family and all the drama. But once I've experienced being on the hill and seeing this great family love and history, it sealed the deal that Honeycutt could be my family too. Well, and I had an instant connection, it seemed, because our experiences as nurses, and we share our caring and nurturing spirit about us. With David Vernon, though, it took a little longer to develop a connection. At first, it seemed as though he was a grumpy old man who would always get what he needed. And he was always saying, well, and woman. But he got to where he could really hear well, and he understood, you know. And he would go down to the basement and turn up the game really loud. But after a while, I saw him. A hardworking man who worked himself through school, and he had a softer side. And how he really cares for people, loves to be with people, go out on adventures, taking places, go on trips, fishing, golfing, whatever he was gonna plan. You know, we were always telling him to stay home, and, you know, he didn't really need to do that. And also saw that he had a tender heart. For his own family. And how deeply he truly loves her. I just hope his son and I can continue this legacy of loving life, learning something new every day, and a deep love in our family now that he's gone. Yes, sir. But we know where he is. And we will see him again someday.
Okay, this time I'm going to call on David Honeycutt.
He is always Uncle Doc. Only way I knew him. It wasn't until I was much older I found out he had a different name. Called by Brad not long ago asking if I would be willing to speak and to have a thought or two. As I was thinking about this opportunity, he truly was the patriarch of the family. He was the one that took on that role, and really he was the epitome of what a Honeycutt trait looked like. If you look at us, Uncle Doc had all of our traits. He's just a little stubborn. Honeycutts are only mostly right. A few items we're still in debate about, and we're only a little crazy. Nah, some more than others. Have you met my Uncle Jerry? You know, Uncle Doc was, from a kid living in Monette and the times that I was around Doc, they had all the cool stuff. Their place was the cool place to be. They had go-karts and they had an Atari. They even had bumper pool. And as we saw Uncle Doc and the things about him, he loved the lake, and that was my first time on a pontoon boat. And being able to think about him, and it's funny how many things remind me of Uncle Doc. Go-karts, pontoon boats, catfish. His front yard had a pond. That's the coolest front yard you'll ever have. Caught the biggest catfish in that pond, and he let me take it home. Night fishing, thanks to Uncle Doc, I kind of like it. He was one that took me night fishing, and he barely made it to dark, for he was in the back in front of the boat sleeping. But you know what reminds me the most of Uncle Doc? Bugs Bunny. What's up, Doc? Because when it comes to Doc, there are so many traits about him. He loved his family, as has been mentioned so many times. From the oldest to the youngest, from the orneriest to the nicest. It's hard to find somebody more generous than him. To so many people, his generosity was seen. And it was hard not to be generous, seeing how generous he was. Man of integrity, white's white, black's black. Community oriented. He loved the city and the community of Monette, putting in so much time spent in order to try to make the community better. But I also think of a God-fearing man. I was mindful of Micah chapter 6, beginning with verse 6. I find this written in the scriptures. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves for a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sins of my soul? And he has told you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. I think about Acts chapter 9 and the young lady Tabitha is in that room, much like this room, I think even today, surrounded by people that were there gathered because of her good works and her acts of charity. I think that can be said of Doc today as well. For many of us are gathered together because of his good works and his acts of charity. You know, it's kind of interesting in our lives, especially from the Honeycutt side, he passing away so early, and many of us never knowing him. It's always kind of put us in a place you never know when your number's up. But I think about Uncle Doc and living to the time that he did. I'm still mindful of Paul's statement at the end of his life. I fought the good fight. I finished the race. I've kept the faith. Henceforth, there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award me in that day, not only to me, but also to all who love his appearing. For the years that I preached in Cassville, there was an assigned seat to the Honeycutts. Halfway, left-hand side, their spot. And I always remember the words of encouragement that he gave to me and to my family and to all that were there, because he cared about the Lord, he cared about the church, and he cared about his family. And those are the things I remember the
Okay, this may come as a surprise to some people. Monette was not the first location that my father considered to start his career. It's not. Any guesses?
Colorado.
Let's say, do. Yes, thanks, Jerry. What town?
So it was in the south central.
Durango, Colorado. Durango, Colorado. That's it. My father, he extensively researched Durango, Colorado, that area, the southwestern part of the state, as a prime location to start the practice. And he was so taken with the area that he actually traveled to Durango to scout it out. And meet the people. You know, my father, he was going to get in there and he was going to try to figure it out. He showed up, he made the rounds around town, touching base of some of the key business leaders. And eventually some of the town leaders, they agreed to meet with him in the prime location in Durango, Colorado in the early 70s for doing business at the town barber shop. There, they made it very clear, in no certain terms, that they had no interest in an outsider from Missouri coming to town to set up a dental practice or any other type of business for that matter. They were very clear with it. So that was that. So where to next? Where do you go? So his research led to an up and coming town in southwest Missouri that was making a very successful transition from a railroad-based economy to a more diversified industrial agricultural base. A town with a long history of civic activity. The town was Monette, Missouri. And the fact that the town was in the middle of numerous Corps of Engineers lakes to the north, south, east, and west, teeming with fish, may have been a factor in moving. So that was that. They moved to Monette. Mom and Dad immediately settled in 6 Cleveland Heights on the north side of town, a really great neighborhood full of some wonderful memories of people. Doc and B. Cole. This is going back. Ralph and Betty Tibbles, the Hager family. You go on and on. Just a great place, a really special place. 73, Rusty came along, family was complete. That's practice at a small house on East Broadway. And that location in later years, that would be the site of Elder's Beauty Salon. He was in that site, and that's where he started the practice. He hired and trained 3 assistants and immediately started his business. I believe we may have some of those. Linda, I don't know if you're here. I know we got Barry Sue Carl. You and Still Wang. Wonderful. I know we've got that. I know we've got many of those assistants that are here today. And I saw that film today. It's great. Great memories. Great staff, great practice. He worked hard and he took his craft very seriously. I remember being really young and he was gone a lot, which you wouldn't think for a dentist, but he was gone. He traveled a great deal. He spent a lot of time traveling into Florida and into down to Dallas and a lot of other places in order to gain some advanced certifications and get into orthodontics, do those things. I never really appreciated that until you get out of school and you understand what professional development is needed, and required. He just did it, and he understood all of that in a way that really set the bar for me and my brother and my sister. He and Mom made a conscious effort to involve themselves in the community, and it certainly did pay off. In the late 70s, Mom and Dad, they moved out to that parcel of land north of town. They purchased that from Valley Dalmas. Jerry Derricker, did a masterful job building that home. That's the only house they've ever owned, by the way. The only one. Outbuildings, dog pens, Christmas tree plantations, 16 head of beef cattle, horses, catfish, many pieces of farm equipment, We begin to scratch the surface of the memories created on the go. You've heard some that I had even forgotten about. I'd forgotten about the go-kart, but the washing machine or. It was a wonderful place to grow up and for all of us to bring our kids to. A wonderful place. Business was good enough that in '78, the practice was relocated to a new building on 1301 East Bond. Dad continued to grow the practice, selling it to Dr. Eric Keene in the early 2000s. Eric continued to stay true to that mission of community involvement. And All Smiles Dental is still a vital part of the community today. My father continued to practice well into his 70s. He was almost 80 when he finally let his license expire, which was tough. Treating multiple generations of the same family. That's so rare. Think about that. We're also very thankful to all of you that are here for your loyalty and support over 4 decades of the practice. That's a career. As I get older, which I am, I've become more amazed at the amount of community involvement by my father. One of my earliest memories of all that is waking up on a Saturday morning at the house in town at 6 Cleveland Heights and finding a goat in the front yard. Next to the goat was a bowl of goat chow or something, and a large shield-shaped sign from the Monette JCs, welcoming Dad to the organization and to the community. In addition to the JCs, Dad's interest in the community were wide and varied and included, but not limited to, the Monette Chamber of Commerce, which awarded my father the 2020 Community Service Award. That was a special night for the family. My father was a fixture at the Monette Christmas Parade. Brad Hawkins, I see you back there. You remember this on multiple occasions. Lining up units at the start of the parade. He was a member of the Monette R1 Board of Education, including extended as president. My father took that responsibility very seriously and always had the best interest of the students in mind. It's a tough job. A board member of the Monette Industrial Development Corporation, where he served as secretary for 25 years. A member of the Monette Kiwanis Club and the treasurer for 30 years. My father relished and cherished his time with the Kiwanis here in Monette. A member of the Monette Sportsman's League. Mom loved it and Dad would go to Sportsman's League auctions. We never knew what was going to come home. A proud member of American Legion Post number 91. And then volunteering for all the kids' activities, Boy, Girl Scouts, Little League, band trips, all of it. He was right in the middle of it. Yeah, A&A TV coaching, First National Bank coaching, just great. My father loved this. I think most of you know that. It's a wonderful community, and I think, again, I want to thank the community so much for the support for this family and practice through the decades. Thank you so much. Church, as has been mentioned, my father had a strong relationship with God was a central part of my father's life. Wherever he lived, he was an active member of the Churches of Christ all the days of his life. He was an earnest student of the Bible and was a servant in all the congregations that he was a member of. Congregations locally that he attended included the Monette Church of Christ and the Castro Church of Christ, and many close associations with other congregations in the area. My father loved singing in church. It was an important component of worship to him and greatly influenced my brother and my sister and myself. It was one of the many ways he gave glory to God and to serve others. My father made worship a priority. No matter where we went for vacation, we made time for church and found a way to attend the congregation. And this was this is pre-internet, right? So, finding a Church of Christ, close to Cape Cod, Massachusetts, wasn't always easy, but we did it. And that gave us some valuable perspective wherever we went. He found a way, a true example for all of us. And we can get in all the other activities, but I think I'm gonna leave that to everybody else, hunting, fishing, golf, the farm, so many wonderful stories. You know, at this time, I'm gonna call, I know we've got a lot of great members of the community here, and I know everybody's got stories. I'm really looking forward to them. At this point, I'm gonna call on Sam. Sam, good, very good friend of my father.
He don't know nothing about fishing.
And a good friend of the rest of the family.
That sounds like a honey nut. I've known, well, Doc and I were friends for over 45 years. I can testify the fact that faith was first with his family, but you've all heard this. But I don't know if he expressed it enough, but he was crazy about his wife. He was always talking to me about Miss Lou. And I don't know if he expressed it to his family or his wife as much as he would tell me. But when you're going thousands of miles in the front end of a pickup with a guy, you talk about things, a lot of things. A lot of you folks out there, I got dirt on you too. But I'm gonna keep some of it to myself because it might splash back. But I remember, Doc's youngest patient ever was my daughter, Lori. She was about 2 weeks old, and she had what they call a superannuated tooth. So my wife kind of panicked, thought she was gonna swallow it. So it took me and Doc, boy, he was so proud he got that tooth and saved it, and still have it to this day, I think. But the first fishing trip is kind of like Nathan was saying, the old pontoon boat at night. There was 4 of us, me, Doc, a fellow named Mark Stillwagon, and another fellow named Gary Henson. And several of you people from Monette know Gary, remember him. He was a bit of a hustler. But that whole night, he never once baited his own hook. Doc baited his hook every time. Ended up, the night was over, we had 4 limits of crappie, and Gary never touched a knife, but he took his share home. We took a lot of trips together, hunting, fishing. The fact is, I was looking at the announcement here, and there's one glaring omission. There should be a picture of Doc, shotgun, a Brickley, and a pheasant. But other than that, it's perfect. But I've been from Louisiana, Texas, Canada, all over the country with him. And he had always picked 4-star motels. But the problem was, it was in the 50s when there were still 4-star motels. We always took a can of road spray with us just to be on the safe side. We had a lot of great times. Try to get a couple of notes here because when you're up there talking, you don't always think of everything. But you know, I guess everybody has their own special stories. We played golf together, and I played a lot with some of the brothers and fished with some of you. And I noticed one thing. He always got Trevor to be on his team. Because Trevor had that annoying habit of being good. You know, the rest of us, we had to battle, but they always seemed to do pretty well together. Oh, by the way, Jen, you might have thought you were the only one to do. The doc said as soon as he met you, he knew you were trolling for the guy. That was one of the first things he told me about. But I guess probably, I mean, he had a great friend in the service named Earl. I met him, and he told me some of the things they did in trips to New York. And I got it. He had a few colloquialisms. I'll try to use different terms, but we'd be out and we'd see somebody and he'd say, "Look at that old gas bag." Not the exact words he used, but you know what I'm talking about. And I'd say, "Doc, how old do you think he is?" he looked at him for a minute, he turned to me with a smile and said, "You smart." Because they're usually about the same age or a little bit younger than not. But, and he was a really very smart man, cared about his profession. I don't know how many trips he'd take to, when he'd come back and tell me the latest techniques like I understood, but he'd explain them all to me. And I remember, this will be my last little story. When we finally went to an actual 3-4-star hotel, whatever you want to call it, we were unloading and there was some people in the parking lot. There was 3 ladies there. And the young lady, she come tracking, she comes up to the dock, said, "What you doing?" I said, "Well, we're pheasant hunting." She said, "I've never seen a pheasant." Doc said, "Well, I'll save you some feathers. I'll give them to you tomorrow." So we went hunting that day. Hunted all day. We stopped to clean the feathers and our doc put them in the bag. I said, "Doc, he's not going to be there." He goes, "Yeah, you know, he was maybe a bit more naive than he thought." We got back, and of course she was gone, and they were gone, and probably they had a profession that he didn't understand. Well, he took the feathers home. We finally stayed at a nice motel, and that's what happened. We knew better off just taking the road spray. I could probably do this for hours and hours, and I know other people have things to say about him. I just gotta say he was probably the best friend I ever had. We had some really great times together. I got to know his family, and there were some really super people. I enjoyed the time I spent with him and hope to see him in the future. And of course, Lou Ellen, just she's the best. Anyway, I'll let you keep going.
You cleaned it up good.
I don't want to get too colorful, so we're going to cut it off.
We're gonna get a little less formal here, because I see people out here, they're gonna be doing the talking. So folks in the community here, let's see who we have. Perhaps you have anything you want to say? I know, I'm counting on, can you give us a few minutes? You got a good guy story?
Most of you probably don't know, I lived here 10 years, but not way like this. I didn't see press. Once upon a time, I was a publisher over that time. One of the first people I met in Odette, David Honeycutt, I was in a motel, hoping my wife would eventually show up, and she did a month later. I went to find something to eat. I ended up in the Black Kettle. Sitting there getting ready to wait on my food, and this gentleman comes by. He looks at you by yourself. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anybody was there. He comes up and says, "Hi, mister, my name is David Honeycutt." And I joined him. So he sat down and he was getting his food to go. "Sorry, Ron, you didn't get to eat that night." So we sat and we talked, and that's how I met David Honeycutt. And there are so many stories. I can tell you about the time that we went fishing with my father-in-law and packed the boat, and David almost sank the boat. It was okay because we survived. After that, we put a bilge pump in the boat. There was a time we played golf with Sam and some others and fishing. But the one thing that it was always so much fun because you could get David. You could always do something to him. You had this great sense of humor. So about this time of year, of course, it's his birthday coming up, and water sports. We started going literally conventions around the world. We ended up in Taiwan, Salt Lake City, Denver, Nashville. But it was about his birthday. And he didn't like to be in the front of the line, so to speak. But we realized one day it was his birthday, so we started saying happy birthday, and he made us be quiet about it. So as the stewardess came by, we were in a plane, and the stewardess came by and we said, "This gentleman's birthday is today." be somebody special. It's Dr. Dave Honeycutt. So the pilot made an announcement that it was Dr. Dave Honeycutt's birthday. Everybody in that plane started singing happy birthday. That was not overjoyed because the stewardess made him raise his hand. We all thought it was hilarious. They did not, but. Well, fortunately, on that trip, I think that was the one to Taiwan, so he had a birthday on the way to Singapore, Taiwan. We did, and every year in Kiwanis, we would sing for his birthday, even on the convention floor. But one time, he was almost speechless, was when we were celebrating and had a surprise party. We celebrated numerous years in ministry. David Mackey put this little thing together, and a lot of people were there. And of course, David gave a testimony. Didn't know it was for him. David just said, it's a surprise party. And they said, okay, we'll go. We're sitting up front, and David was up as MC, and still said, everything is going good. We're starting to go, and then Dayton gets up and says, okay, now you all know why we're here. This is to celebrate. And a waitress comes up. I think we're at the Lane Station. The waitress comes up and says, excuse me. Comes up, taps Dayton on the shoulder and says, you have a phone call. It's an emergency call. So Dayton says, okay. He turned over and says, here, Dave. Take over. Well, Dave stands up and he's looking at everybody, and Dayton's left the room. He looks at me, and he has no earthly idea what's going on. So Dave says, just take over. He runs out and takes like, you know what we're on. Say anything because you all know. We thought this was going to end in about 15, 20 seconds. Dayton, I could see him out of the corner of my eye, and he was just about to roll over. Everybody was laughing except David. And after a good 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes, we finally just reached over and pulled off the thing on the back. It said, I think it was the Two Anchor Times that night. And David just turned around and know who to talk about this. Well, now that we know why we're here.
Thank you for coming from Texas, sir.
I've got one more story on Doc. You all know how Doc can sleep. I went on Christmas. My brother and his wife so Doc got to be real good friends with Doc close. So he'd go up and picture. Well, or they didn't get around where the Doc is. He'd be up there and he'd be hiding in the tree. Well, so they get over there when we work out the middle of the morning. There's other people in the cold. They just come through, my brother, they come through the river real slow and he's the car. I can't stand. He was laying over in the seat, and they were kind of talking and not getting attention. But pretty soon David pulled up his stick and poked him. We got the ambulance on the way, Doc. That's one of Doc's sleep stories.
One of Doc's sleep stories. Okay, great.
My name's Mike Garrett, and I shared 40 years of fun relationships with Dave Honeycutt. We had a lot of associations in which we worked, everything from the Monette J.C.'s, Monette Industrial Development Corporation, the Republican Party, to bridge games, where we sometimes enjoyed being each other's associates and sometimes enjoyed being each other's proponents. David and I shared a lot of adventures and misadventures. And it's one of those misadventures that he loved to tell people about. And since he won't be here to share this story in the future, I want to share it with you at this time. David was working on my mouth, some portion of my mouth, I'm sure, and mentioned that he was going to go fetch some firewood for the upcoming winter season. And of course, I said, well, David, I need to get some firewood for the Garrett house. And he said, well, let's go together. And I said, where are we going to go? Well, he said, I've got this friend out by the Pleasant Ridge community, and he's given us permission to go into his woods and cut down any dead trees that might be there. So I think it was a Saturday morning that we left. David's pickup drove out to this acreage, and there was this tall, dead red oak tree. David had his chainsaw with him. He cut it off, laid it out, and then began cutting 2-foot sections out of that long red oak tree. And as he would cut them, I would turn them up, and with my axe begin splitting logs out of there that we could throw in the back of the pickup to take back to Monette. Well, we quickly discovered that this tree was hollow, all the way from the stump that David had cut up to the top. So it was, my job was easy. I'd simply roll that hollow stump over, and it was easy to cut 6 or 7 logs out of that to take home for the fire. Until I got to the last hollow log. I rolled it over, began to take a cut, and the largest raccoon I'd ever seen in my life crawled up out of that last log. She had been moving up and down on that hollow tree to avoid the Honeycutt chainsaw. I froze. Now, David said I wet my pants, but I want you to know that was a later embellishment. I froze, and he told me at the time that my eyes got as big as saucers, which I'm sure is true. And he couldn't be standing. He was sitting laughing out loud on the stump that he had just cut. On the way back to Monette in the pickup, to his credit, David never said another word about what he had just witnessed. He would just occasionally look over at me and laugh so hard the cab of the pickup actually shook. Later, at my expense, he loved to tell that story anytime he had an opportunity. Now, Llewellyn, I know from my association with your husband that he was often forgetful, particularly as time went on. David was a client of mine, and at his request, I incorporated his professional corporation many, many years ago. And also at his request, I ordered an official corporate seal that he could use to seal his corporate documents with. The problem was David could never find the seal. And so finally, out of frustration, 25 years ago, he said, Garrett, you take this seal, because then I'll always know where it is. Well, and I still have that seal for the David V. Honeycutt DDS Professional Corporation. And because you were the one that kept finding the things that David misplaced, I think you should be the custodian.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, let's see how, oh, I'm not getting hands getting raised here. This is great.
next. In here. Not the best bridge player. And what I'm really thankful for, David, when I got to think about some stories like that, really was close to. The meetings were good place. David learning something new every day. In the beginning of the ministry, it was that long to find out that I didn't learn something new every day. So he never embarrassed me. You know, with like the years and seeing, talking with other players playing about this exotic thing that if he did this, he knew to do that. But he never bothered me with it. So I appreciate that. Probably one of the outstanding things that ever happened on New Year's Eve through the years was the couples bridge group that we played in. We always played on New Year's Eve. This is not a very risque group, as you can imagine, but we would have champagne on New Year's Eve. This particular year, we went to Member's house in Rivercut, Springfield. Nice big subdivision, but it's not laid out square, rectangular, so you know where you were. But we show up. It was a typical winter evening. We play cards. And again, we had some champagne, but you know, they were pretty particular about not inviting. And the biggest disappointment in my life was when we left. David was left just a few minutes before. This is a winding subdivision road. And lo and behold, he had been stopped for leaving, and the cops had him pulled over. So I always regretted not having a camera to write.
I've a lot of years with Dave, a lot of experiences. A couple of things, and I'm sure a lot of you probably have experienced this, but back when they had the Christmas tree farm out there, and my daughter was probably 8 years old the first year that they had the trees to sit, and we went out there, and as again, probably a lot of you know, they had a wagon set up, hay wagon. You got on the wagon and he took you back to the Christmas tree back there and let you pick out the tree that you wanted. And so first year it was really cold, I remember. And he's down there on the ground, crawling in under this tree because it's really important. He's told us to cut the tree off level so that it will set level when you get home. So here I'm seeing this picture of my dentist crawling under this Christmas tree. So when we came back, again, you all probably have seen this, he had rigged up this, I don't know what's called, but he was making an old sickle mower and taking it apart, fixed it so he set the Christmas tree on it, and turned that mower on, through power takeoff, and shake that tree. Birds and stuff off, so we take it home. For years and years, that was one of the highlights of my daughter's Christmas. We gotta go back out there. We still talk about that. Another incident I was this was 10 or 12 years ago. My wife was in the hospital, and she'd been there a couple of days. And had 2 or 3 nice flower arrangements there. And I was up there in the room with her. She kind of dozed off, and I dozed off. And somebody came in the room, trying to wake her up. Saw it was Dave, and he had arrangement down here by by his side. And I'm trying to get my eyes on him. He went over to the table where his other flower arrangements were. And he set this thing up in front. And he had, it was old, rusty Maxwell House coffee can. He shoved down 4 or 5 flowering weeds. Twist his mouth. All laughing. One of the funniest things I've ever seen done. Some stuff. One, David Vernon. People don't realize how good his memory was. Here in 83 and 84, really my wife. She's there, worked on, laying back, with her mouth open, and he says, I know. And he said, did you go to West Plains Residence Center? And she said, yes. Well, they were in the class together the year before he married Llewellyn, 64. 20 years later, he looked at her out. She didn't even finish out the year that we got married and went to New Jersey. But he remembered something about her mouth. She was able to help him later. We went to Canada together, and I don't know if you remember this or not, because you went up. But Forest Western, that's right. He caught a fish that had teeth in his mouth. Fish's teeth. I wasn't gonna argue. But his hand was bleeding. No, it's okay, it's okay. David, I will fix your hand. We took our boat over next to you. She fixed his hand and he was real quiet. She left out, he didn't mention it. He went to the West Plains Residence Center. That's many things. But anyway, one other thing, you know,
anybody in Morgan County, I'm pretty much.
How can I? But Regina and Stanley, grandmother, hey, so you live just down the road from these sisters. But you're in Howard County. Morgan County is just right online.
Right. Dr. Elska.
Dave and I are not related. We're friends. My friend Alice is, that's precious. Instead of we got acquainted. I didn't seek him, he didn't seek me. My dentist retired and I needed a dentist, and I went with his chair. He took care of me, and people paid him. Now, dental surgeon. I'm closing in on 95 years of age, and I still have my own teeth. Thank you, David. We got acquainted. Time went along, and I became superintendent of schools. Unbeknownst to me, I had nothing to do with it. The patrons of the school district elected David Honeycutt to my school board, one of 6. Think about it for a minute. When you deal with all of 6, it requires a high level of skill. It requires commitment. It requires concentration. David always studied all the background information on every agenda item. He knew what we were talking about. He didn't try to bully or push his way and make that board do things. But I have a sneaking suspicion if somebody does some research on the decisions made by that Board of Education, you'll find out that most of them were not up to be those things that David was suggesting. He was a good Board of Education member. Took me pheasant hunting to Kansas and South Dakota, and that was wonderful. One night he said, I'm going crappie fishing tomorrow night. I've never been fishing for crappie at night. We pulled the boat up, it was dark, and he hung a lantern over the side with the reflector down, and the boats collected, and the minnows collected, and the crappie collected, and we started catching crappie. I said, is this illegal? I said, is this kind of like throwing a stick of dynamite in? He said, no, this is legal, but I can tell you about throwing dynamite in.
Okay. Oh, here we go.
I'm Beth Hilton. I worked with Dr. Honeycutt for many years. I started everything. Started making things. It's Glenn here. Raise your hand. You may or may not remember me, but when I first started there, I was 19, and I found Dr. Honeycutt very intimidating. I was a 19-year-old girl, and I'm walking through the office, and I thought, I'm gonna sneak in this door for a minute just to get a break. And there's Honeycutt sitting in there. Who are you? That's Dr. Glenn. And when he left, I was very impressed because I ended up doing some lab work and stuff in there. And I found a Bible in one of the drawers. And I knew that Glenn said in there that the Bible is like that impressed me. I'm going to tell you kids something too. I remember when you first picked up, was it Nestle or Hershey or something you started out? Nestle, I call her. Your dad was very proud. Right. And Rusty, where are you at? Your dad would tell a story about you when you were in high school. It had something to do with stepping out of the bedroom door and some boys giving you a hard time if you put his face in the mud puddle. Your dad was so proud. He was so proud. I think there was some other kids in school that were too. But he was also proud of your work. The drum corps and the competitions that you're in. Very proud of that. And Diane, he loved you, and he would say that you didn't have no problem. But you had more ability than yourself. Very proud of that. I don't have a lot of. I worked with him for probably 13 years, full time, 5 days a week. I don't know if got any other assistants that stayed that long full time. And he was not always easy to work with. There were some days I went home, I didn't like him very much at all. But he was a wonderful, wonderful teacher. And where I'm at my job today, I'm still in ministry, is because of the things that.
Anybody else? Okay. All right, thank you so much for that. Oh, that. I've got a couple of things. Okay, I do. Uncle Ben, Uncle Ben. All right. My daughter Paige.
summer. And I got to spend time with my cousins and my aunt Diane. So I would do that every year for probably 5 or 6 years. And I would come and Grandpa would meet me and he'd give me a hug, he'd pick me up and give me a squeeze. Then he'd put me down and grab my face and say, "Let me look at your teeth." He'd say, "You know, I know when you're not wearing your retainer." But I always loved coming here, and we would go to Branson and we would go into the office on the weekends and they'd make me a new retainer because I lost the last one. But we did always go fishing. We went to White River and a few other places, but we always went to Eagle Rock Lake. And there was this one time that we went, I think it was just me and him and Grandma. And I don't know where Grandma had gone, but we were putting the boat in the water and it had stormed pretty bad the day before. And the water was really high. Like there were some sections where there were like little raised terraces where there were picnic tables and all those were underwater. There was no beach. And he had brought the trailer back and got the boat in the water and he put me in the boat right away and said, "All right, just wait here, I'm gonna get the trailer out," but he hadn't tied up the boat. And the water was pretty choppy, it was windy out, and it was really high, and so I started floating away. And he didn't turn around until I was almost past where all the picnic tables were, and he turned around and was like, "Ah!" Fastest I ever seen him move. There were some people that were by where those terraces were, and they grabbed onto the boat and held it for him until he got out there and climbed the ladder on the back. And like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And the entire time I was like, "Grandpa!" Like I was trying to tell you, but I had already been floating away. So we would always go to that lake and go fishing there. There were a couple good spots. So that's always something that I'll think about when I think of him, because you think about my grandpa, you think of different things. Some people start thinking about golf or bridge or dentistry, but I always think about fishing. So that's a good memory that I'm always going to keep, even though he almost lost me.
All right, thank you, everybody, for all the stories and all the memories. That's what it's about, right there. After. Well, I had you, but on the agenda, come on up. It's all good. Well, I'm ready. If you're ready, then I'm ready. There you are. You want to get behind the podium?
No, because they won't be able to see me. They say, Anuela, would you stand up? And I say, I am standing. Some of you I have not been able to greet personally. I see you out there and I may not get to you. I just want you to know how much we appreciate you being here. It means so much to my family and to me. And if I don't get to greet you personally, like, please know how much we appreciate this. Family, you know how much Doc and I love you all. You know, we're all a part of each other's lives and the community. It's been a wonderful, wonderful place to raise a family. We chose Monette. We thought this was where we needed to be. I mean, we love the community. You know, hometown pride is a very important, it's a great force, but small town hometown pride is unstoppable. And we're so glad that we were always grateful for all of the support that this community gave to us. We thought that we were blessed by God to be here. And thank you for being here today.
Okay, we'll see how the weather goes here. We are gonna do military rights for those who wish to stay. The weather seems to be changing about every 30 seconds. That's okay, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it for Dad. But before we close, I am gonna give some recollections of my father. Our father's expectations were pretty simple. Work hard, do your best, obey and respect your parents, tell the truth, and most importantly, love and serve your God. My father placed a priority on making memories for all of us as a family and for his friends too. I think we've proven that today. He took us to places all over the country that many never got to see. Boston, Virginia, New York, Yellowstone, Koshkonong. He taught us about the greater world and always made sure we knew about our roots and where we came from. We were fortunate to have a father that supported our dreams and our hopes. He wanted the best for us and all of us to be the best that we could be. He didn't just support our dreams, he was an active participant in them. Not in an intrusive way, though, most of the time. He knew how to hold back in that regard. But even when he did cross that line, it was very, very rarely. It was usually in a wonderful way. I've got one last story. So it's Buffalo, New York. It's August 1990. I'm going on with my Cavalier brothers. Getting ready to go on, right? I got 35,000 people in front of me. I got PBS Live, biggest thing I'll ever do musically. I've got a caption guy next to me. We're on the line. We're ready to go. He's like, hey, Brad, look over there. It's like somebody's yelling at you. And it was me. Right? I don't know how he got through security, but he was in the back, right? And we're getting ready to go along. Hey, how you doing? He's got his Cavaliers cap, what you wore at every drum corps championship we ever went to. And, turn that back around. And he was there. He was an active participant. Kind of out of the way, but he was proud. He was proud of us. And he wanted to be there for us and let us know that he supported us. And that's who my father was. And he supported this community, and this community loved and supported him. I just want to thank everybody for the support. Over the past months, there's some people here. I'm not going to call you out individually, but there's some people here. I don't know what I would have done without you. I don't know what we would have done as a family. So thank you so much. So thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. We're going to close it now. And but again, remember Dad. Take his example throughout the rest of your life, and have a wonderful day. I'm going to get with the American Legion here. We will do the rights. I think we're scheduled for about 3 o'clock, so we have a few minutes yet. So thank you, everybody.